My name is Bill Raskowski. I'm the Secretary of the Western Australia Historical Cycle Club. A few months ago, we had a display at the Perth Museum about the Nullarbor crossing, a history challenge crossing the Nullarbor on bicycles, starting from the mid-1890s. And today, we have 3 bicycles out there to represent bicycles that crossed. And more importantly, we have a guest speaker here who crossed the Nullarbor on a BMX. On this bike here. So I want to introduce Chris Navis, who's the actual rider and the person we're talking about. It's a question and answer. I'll be asking questions. By all means, if you have questions to ask as well, you can ask as well. So Chris, give a little history of who you are, where you grew up.
Yeah, so I'm a local. So I live in Wellington, 20 minutes out of town, between here and Northern. I'm there with my wife, Michelle, and my 3 boys. One of which is here. So yeah, local to the area, and my background in cycling and background in BMX is at the Northern BMX Club. So I'm currently president at Northern BMX, but raced as a teenager there, and yeah, that's sort of the affinity to BMX bike.
So as a kid, you were BMX.
Yeah, so I started racing when I was 11 or something, when the club restarted up in Northern, and then raced sort of semi-professional up until 2003. We competed at state titles and some pieces.
And cycling, bicycle racing had you travel around the country as well, right?
Yeah, so went to state titles, but also national titles and world titles. So a number of national parties at the time were held in Adelaide, and so some of those we drove across the Nullarbor, a bit quicker, obviously driving across, but that was sort of my first exposure as a teenager to Australian distances.
So when did you first want to say, I want to ride a BMX across Australia and Nullarbor specifically?
It probably came in parts. So that drive across the national titles in Adelaide, we saw 1 or 2 cyclists, just on normal bikes, riding across, and sort of thought that seems like hard work, but something a bit interesting. And then it was a few years later, I was living with a couple of mates. Probably had too many beers, and we thought, well, maybe it might be a good challenge for us to go and tackle. And we did a bit of research. Can you sort of ride that far on a BMX bike? And there had been a couple of guys in the States that had ridden across America, but they had done it in 2 parts. So they had done sort of 2,000 Ks or so, stopped, and then at a later stage they came back and did this sort of second half. So that sort of gave us an idea that it is something that is doable. That's sort of that.
So you recruit some friends. Who did you recruit?
Yeah, so it wasn't sort of, it was a joint idea, but recruited. Well, the idea was with a friend called Dale, that I was living with at the time, and my older brother. He also raced BMX, and still does race BMX, Glenn. So it was the 3 of us that, before we give it a crack.
So part of the planning, did you have any sponsors, or did you think about get money raised for this, or what were your thoughts on that?
So I'm the good looking one on your right. This is my brother Glenn and Dale and Neil. We were pretty poor uni students at the time, so but we just sort of self-funded our bits that we needed predominantly. We did get a little bit of help along the way, but we tried to, we thought we're doing this epic challenge, and we wanted to raise some funds for charity, and so we partnered up with the Asthma Foundation of Western Australia, and I did and still suffer from asthma as Glenn, and Dale, I think it was Dale's sister, had asthma. So it was something that was sort of common to 3 of us, and so it sort of felt like a great choice of a charity because
I'm sure they were happy to have you be well as well.
It was something quite different for them at the time. You know, I guess they had some concern around making sure that we weren't free, and we were quite young at the stage, sort of 19, 22. I think Glenn was making sure that we were not going to get stuck on an Nullarbor. This is probably not a great look for a charity kind of thing, but apart from that, they were really happy and they were happy. There was a fundraising aspect to it, but there was obviously a lot of conversations to be had in the preparation and the lead up to. And so here's an example of us talking. I think I was doing primary school when we went and spoke to your kids about what we're doing and what have you. So there's that aspect to it as well.
You're planning for it as well. When you're planning with the map. So.
Huge amount of planning because in a car, I guess you need to make sure that you've got enough fuel to get to your next stop. For us, as part of that planning, the next stop might be, I think it's about 190 k's or something. There's going to be bigger gaps there. For us, that was about 2 days worth of cycling. So that meant that we had to carry enough water, enough food, and whatever else we get between the two. So there was that aspect of the planning and planning about how do you take, it was an unsupported ride, so we didn't have anyone following us or anything like that. So anything that we needed to take with us, which was in these trailers that we brought out of America. And so a lot of planning as to what was the sort of essential stuff that we had to have to last us for roughly 5 weeks that we were planning on taking. So just before I change slides, Chris Hemsworth there next to us, that was at Astor Foundation charity ride soon after we finished the ride. So
why is Chris there? When he was filming?
He was on home and away at the time, and so that was just a bit of star power that Astor Foundation trying to promote their event as well. So not expecting you to be able to sort of read this, but this was roughly to give us our schedule of what we were hoping to achieve. And so we did a ride from late June, and the timing of our ride was Dale and I were at university at the time, and in between our last exam and our first class back, we had 5 weeks or 5.5 weeks, and so that set our schedule as to when we had to go. And so we flew out to Adelaide the day after our exams finished, and then I think it was the next day we started our journey back towards Perth. So a lot of planning.
The trailers, are your camping gear? What do you have for staying overnight?
So as I said, a lot of planning as to what we thought was essential, and so we little tents, sleeping bags, tools, spare parts, food. We were buying food along the way, but there was some stuff that we tried to start out with, cooking utensils, and bits and pieces. As I say, there was many nights that we weren't going to be anywhere near a town or a roadhouse, and so we were trying to do that, and so trying to sort of narrow it down so we could fit in those trailers, which aren't very expensive, but we had the 3 of us with the trailers, so we sort of spaced it out, so one person carried a tent and one cooking gear and that kind of stuff.
So you took about 12 months to plan this, roughly?
It would have been about that. Some of the planning was pretty easy, but obviously there was a bit of training. We were all BMXers, but the BMX is a sport of about 30 to 45 seconds of incredible speed and power, and nothing about endurance. But if you get to 50 seconds, you're puffed, and so it was quite different in terms of what it was that we were trying to achieve. And so we were roughly working on 100 kilometres a day that we were cycling, not much by sort of a road bike standard, but from a BMX standard, obviously that's quite a trek, and so we were doing rides and making sure that we were right from there. But yeah, planning and logistics and coordinating and bits and pieces, yeah, took a fair bit of preparation, trying to understand the weather and what we might face with this kind of bits and pieces.
And so now, let's talk about the ride, the preparing, planning, getting your friends together, your brother, Aspen Foundation, it's all started. Let's talk about the ride itself. The first few days, how did it go?
Yeah, well, so in terms of maps, just before I jump into that, we just had paper maps, so that's how we were sort of keeping track. The little signs on the side of your road you see when you're driving along 5Ks to go or 10Ks, they were humorous to us, but they were also important. To see one appearing in the distance was fantastic. So for us, we were probably travelling about 12Ks an hour on average or something like that. And so some of these signs are 5Ks apart, some are 10Ks apart. So they're 10K an hour, a 10K distance between signs. They're 50 minutes before you see your next one. So they were pretty good. So you could imagine when we got to 1 kilometre to the state border, that was pretty exciting for us, that anticipation and the countdown. And we thought it, again, humorous to us for emergency telephone in 10 kilometres. For us, that meant 50 minutes away if we could ride and something had gone wrong. So we didn't have satellite phones or anything like that, so that was that side of things. And just before I jump into the first few days, our budget for accommodation was $0. We just expected to sleep in tents most of the way. Most of the expenditure was in that sort of preparation and getting over, and we allowed a generous $13 a day per person for us to eat on. So it was this was 20 years ago, but it was done on a budget, and so yeah.
So that was your fuel bill.
That was our fuel bill, yes. And obviously sometimes we splurge. I remember one of the roadhouses on Nullarbor had a 1 kilo steak and you get a free t-shirt. And obviously we're pretty hungry guys, and so that wasn't an issue for us, but all the shirts were like triple XL, and we're sort of small, medium sort of guys at the time, and so it was quite humorous in that. But yeah, the first few days was a challenge. Obviously, as you're leaving Adelaide, you don't have your flats at Nullarbor, and these bikes are not built for hills. So obviously, for those that don't know, BMX is a single gear bikes. Obviously, they're not really made for endurance cycling, not made for pulling trailers. And so to get up a hill, you had to stand up to get enough power to sort of go up the hill. So every hill you were standing up the entire time. The on your flats or downhill was great because you could sit down. And so you can see we were feeling it as we sort of got into the mix of it. Just another thing in this photo here, it's not on my bike now, but we had these bar ends on there, not just to hold our donations in, but just so that we could mix up where our hands were and sit a little bit more upright and those kind of bits and pieces. A few sort of adjustments at the time, and we were through sort of BMXs. We didn't wear cycling pants or things like that, but we were BMX racers, and so we were just wearing ordinary shorts. But that was by choice. But certainly.
Your saddle looks quite large. The pictures of you, it doesn't look as though you've got what we would call the optimum leg length.
No, you certainly don't. And so at the time we got the longest seat post that we could, which was not long enough. Now you can get extensions and bits and pieces for them. At the time that was as long as, and we went well past the recommended maximum height that you could bring them out. You weren't having a great lead.
You know he's road comfort.
So yeah, you never got to a full extension, and that's why you had to stand up to get the power to be able to go up the hill.
But
So,
your knees were okay, though. You didn't do some.
well, the Glen, our second or third day in, knees were starting to cause some grief, and we made and we sort of pushed on, and he went and saw a doctor and said, this is going, we're 10% of the way into this ride, am I going to be right to go? And I think the doctor at the time said, your knees are going to get worse before they get better, but and so Glenn was faced with the difficult decision: does he push on and hope that he'll be right, or if he pushed on and he wasn't, then it could get really awkward because getting back to an airport or something would be really hard. And so Glenn made the unfortunate decision to stop the ride about that day 3, day 4. And so that had huge implications for us because suddenly we went from having 3 trailers where we would split our camping gear and cooking gear down to only 2 trailers. And so suddenly we reevaluated what we thought was essential. We'd spent 12 months sort of working out what was essential, and then suddenly in the space of one night we had to sort of really rationalise what was essential, and so a lot of what we thought was essential we decided wasn't. And one of my favourite photos from my ride is this photo here. Our cooking stuff went down to, we had a knife, fork and spoon. That was the extent of our cooking stuff from that night onwards. And so this was breakfast for us with Nutrigrain in the chopped milk or whatever, because we had no bowls or plates or anything like that. We made do without that. So we had a lot of sandwiches, a lot of dry 2-minute noodles, and what we could from the roadhouses as we sort of went.
So then, you budget $30 a day, but your budget was $30.
Yeah.
So what were you eating? Every day you had chopped milk. Every day you had all these soups and mixes. Did you get sick of those foods at all?
Well, we'd certainly have the cheese sausage or whatever when we get to the roadhouse, but that's and yeah, that was a bit of a treat, so to say. Otherwise, yeah, it was 2-minute noodles, cold pasta, or yeah, what we could from breakfast cereal, and lots of bread, just jam sandwiches. So we'd buy loaves at a time, and that would be our breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
So I was crossing the Nullarbor itself, the Nullarbor plain, pretty fast.
It was, and this photo is just before these are about the last trees before we went on to Nullarbor, and we were just camping on the largely, certainly as we got out there, just on the side of the road where we got to that night, very occasionally. So the top photo was actually early on. We managed to score change rooms in the footy club. Don't smell nice, it's not great, and I think we decided twice that we needed a bed to sleep in, and one was really flash accommodation, as you might be able to tell from that top right picture. I think that was somewhere on the Nullarbor where the bathroom was that flat somewhere. But by and large it was in a tent on the side of your road, and you felt really exposed doing that, just because if something went wrong, you or if your bike's got pinched or something during the night, it would be really difficult to overcome. So
this is before 2004, before modern technology, phone, but you communicate much with your foundation, with the parents?
From time to time, as at some roadhouses, you had opportunity for a payphone or something like that. So that was our only opportunity. So occasionally we'd touch base, but we certainly didn't have, we weren't carrying phones at the time. So yeah, it was just here and there that we would be able to touch them and let people know that they're still alive and travelling.
So you crossed Nullarbor with no big problems, and any problems moved from Nullarbor to Perth?
Well, we certainly had our challenges. this was just a funny little photo. You probably can't see what Dale's holding in his hands. We managed to get some nail clippers because that wasn't in our essential, but the 5 or 6 weeks of the ride, we were probably 3.5, 4 weeks in at this stage for Dale thought that was pretty essential. So as soon as we got on, that was pretty good. We obviously had a little bit of weather, but nothing too dramatic. I think we were able to time one of those 2 nights that we actually stayed in the bed had been really wet, and so there was a chance for us to try and dry things out a little bit. So we had some challenges like that, but ultimately it was just a slow sort of slog along the way. There's helping lunch of champions, so there's some 2-minute noodles.
What about the long hours?
The
Kangaroos and camels?
Yeah, we saw obviously all of those and wombats. One of the things in terms of roadkill on a BMX bike when you're going really slow, you can smell it for a long way there and it lingers for a long way back. So that is a really unpleasant thing. In a car, you don't give it much thought. You pass it before you know it. So that was a bit of a pain. Why Dale wanted to move it off the road there. For the photo at the top left here, it was around, we had some eagles following us at times, and you'd sort of go, come on, we're not moving that slow, but anyway, it was a bit humorous. The photo here on the right, it's really easy to sort of see these, and we're happy and smiling and sun shining. This was at the end of one day, and I was shattered. The cumulative nature of riding each day. And this was Caledonia, I think, as we were coming through, and ice on seats in the morning. So it was a bit cool in the mornings as we were getting going. But by and large, we were really fortunate with the weather side of things. So
how we took plan is your scheduled beginning. Did you finish it on time?
Yeah, I think we did. There were some days where you would have to do a bit of a bigger day because something had not gone to plan the day before. But by and large, we were able to stay on schedule. As many would know that have been across the Nullarbor, you've got the 90-mile straight, and that's a really depressing day when you know it's a long way in a car, boring straight one way. On a bike, that's nearly 2 days cycling on a straight road, and so but it was amazing what you got to see, and you get a whole different appreciation than what you do in the car. You can appreciate, you see things, and appreciate it far more than that.
No problem with the trucks? So no problems with the cycling?
Not for us personally, but we were really vigilant around the truck. And it was really unfortunate. We came across a couple of cyclists going the other way on this. They were on normal bikes, and one of those cyclists we had to give water to, which is a really tricky thing to do when you're budgeting pretty finely as to how much water you got, because they had run out of water and they were still a long way from their destination, and their comment was it's a lot further on the map. And they also were expecting when they got to a place for it to be a town, not a roadhouse. But another cyclist that we passed, unfortunately, the next night or the night after, they were killed. And that news travels along. And then so we found out about that pretty quickly, just by passing motorists, letting us know. But that person, and I don't know full circumstances, but when we passed them, they were wearing dark clothing, and we understand they were killed in the evening. And so it was just probably not the wisest of choices to be making. And so for us, we actually, one of our bikes had a little mirror that was sticking out the side, but generally you could hear, particularly as you got out in the Nullarbor, you could hear traffic coming from a long way, or you could see it from a long way. And so we made a point that We would never be on his road if there was going to be two cars passing or a truck, two vehicles passing at the same time. If that was going to happen, we'd be off before they got to us. Or we would never let a vehicle pass us on the crest of the hill. And so that meant we either had to pedal our butts off for 5 minutes to avoid that situation from occurring, or we slow down, or we pull off. And so we were really vigilant around it. Generally speaking,
Could you still ride when you pulled off, or you just stopped?
no, we just stopped. And so yeah, we were really vigilant around it. It was still not great. The trucks were great because where they could, they would give you room. And so that's what we had to do, is make sure that they had that space to give us room. But you would still absolutely feel it as a truck goes past. It has quite a vacuum sort of to it. So yeah, but we were really conscious around that. It gets a little bit difficult both ends where the traffic's a little bit more frequent, but generally the roads are got a little bit more of a shoulder on them. So yeah, great question.
So after the ride was over, how much money did you raise for the Adler Foundation?
I think it was about $10,000 or so that we had raised. Yeah, we were really happy at that stage. Because again, that was before the ability to do things on social media and stuff to any great extent. So yeah.
So then after you rode across on BMXs, you have a desire to say, I want to do that again?
Certainly not immediately, but it was a fantastic adventure. It really was, and it was really interesting hopping into a car when we got at the other end, and it felt strangely fast because we were so used to the slow sort of pace, and then suddenly you're hopping something that's going 9 or 10 times quicker than what we've been sitting on for so long. But we certainly were still into riding, but we didn't actually plan on a ride or anything about let's turn around and go back or anything like that. But certainly that interest. So at the time I was living with 2 other guys, so Dale that we rode with and another guy, Kyle. And so Kyle wasn't so much of a cyclist, but I think he was quite drawn into the stories and the story of it and some of the adventures that we had along the way.
So then you finish this one.
Yeah.
A couple years later, you have a desire to do this again.
Yeah. So and that was just as we came through. That was in Grass Valley, just locally, a Northern BMX club, and then obviously in the city as we sort of finished up. And so, it was probably roughly two years later. Kyle had a bit of an interest, and I put on a few kilos by that stage, and I thought, well, maybe we should go again and have a ride, but let's not be silly about it. Let's do it at least on a normal bike. And so that's what we sort of set about. And so so this is my mate Kyle here, and this was a ride. We basically followed the same route, but we were supported this time. It was a completely different sort of ballpark in that Kyle's dad came with us, and so we drove across different time of year. And we were working at this time, and so we left on Christmas night, drove across the strait for a day and a half, or whatever it was, got there, and then the next morning started the ride back. But Kyle's dad would catch up with us, generally speaking, every 2 or 3 hours. So we were only then having to carry water for 2 or 3 hours, and we didn't have to really worry about food apart from a muesli bar or something like that. And so it was a very different dynamic.
You can't be wrong.
Yeah. So we were, but it was a different level of camping. I think it's on the next slide. So we had swags, and you'll see some later pictures that we had some proper deck chairs. This was from our first ride. That's all we had to sit on our first ride was this little ride seat, but on the second one we had just camping chairs and bits and pieces. So it was luxury, really.
One more slide. So that was it.
Which one?
Going before this one.
Yeah, Musings eyes, because obviously my Kyle was the one that was just interested in the adventure, really, but for whatever reason, that ride, the BMX one, I think we probably had a puncture or something like that. It really wasn't an issue, but this wasn't the case. This one, so this photo was us leaving Adelaide. This was about 5 minutes later. But our first puncture started nearly straight away, and obviously we had it sort of throughout, as we were getting punches, just not as heavy duty of a tyre and a bit more susceptible to it. So we didn't have any major mechanical issues outside of that, so you can live with those sort of things. But again, it comes down to that prep to make sure that you don't expect to have lots of punches, but you need to be able to deal with a lot if you do it, because you don't get tubes as they're coming across the Nullarbor.
So the first trip was totally unsupported. You were by yourself on BMXs with trailers. It took you 5 weeks to do that.
Yeah.
This one you supported, basically by yourself with a friend on more road bikes, fast road bikes, and better gear. How long did it take you to do this?
Yeah, and so like this was us heading over, but you can see we had heaps of gear. We weren't trying to fit it in the trailer, massive esky that we could keep food and stuff. So this was 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Was our schedule? So we had 2 weeks break from work, and so that meant that roughly we were doing, or needed to do about 250 k's a day or something like that. So on a road bike. That's not too bad actually on a road bike, but where it comes a bit challenging is either if you're not strong cyclists, so time, or the fact that you're doing it day after day. We didn't have rest days in that 2 weeks, it was just cycling every day. So
when was it a challenge? A bit warmer that time of year?
it was well, yes and no, absolutely. It was really hot, and certainly as we came into Eucla, generally we were trying to ride from first light roughly through to 1 o'clock in the armour or something like that, stop for 4 or 5 hours, and we might try and get a little bit in the evening. And so I remember coming into Eucla, and I think it was probably 2 o'clock or something by the time I got there, and I think it was 51 on our in the sun, because obviously you don't have shade out there. So yeah, it was hot. The most of it we could avoid by choosing times to have a ride. So, but as with the first ride, the knees were sort of unforgiving. When you're on a bike that has less sort of air to protect you. This was my hands partway during the ride, I think it was, and a bit of strange photos, but that was as flat as I could get my hands, and that was as close as I could get my fingers. So that was me trying to do that, and I just couldn't, because of holding onto your bike, and it's not the smooth bitumen that you've got out here. It's really quite rough, not rough in potholes, just rough and really coarse, and so but it was a trip that was a lot more casual than and this for us this was luxury. I mean, to have a barbecue and have a can of drink, but it was a bit more fun. It was a couple of guys having a ride. The challenge came from Kyle had to take some days off, and so Kyle as we got into Kyle might have been able to manage 160 k's or something like that, and then the next day he would have a rest, and I would have to make up that shortfall. So we were trying to average 220, and so suddenly it would be a 280 k out there that you try and do yourself. You still had Kyle and his dad come and support you, but I remember, and I don't have a photo of it, but I remember, and it was on in Nullarbor. We had some weather coming in, and I had a day where I had to make up some ground, and so we, for whatever reason, we didn't camp where we finished the night before, so we had to drive back or forward or something. And so the next morning, it was about 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. I got dropped back up to where we finished the day before, and I was by myself, and you guys will catch up to me at 7 or something like that, and so you're riding at night, again, popping off the road when vehicles came. But you feel pretty lonely at that stage in the middle of the night where you can't see anything for hours on end. Had a really strong headwind that morning as well, so that was pretty demoralising. But you get into your routine. But certainly part of any of your rides is the mental aspect of it and keeping in your right frame of mind about it.
Both the first BMX class and this one, did you ever think about stopping or ride yourself personally? You usually not doing this.
No, I didn't, but I was really, and perhaps I was, in both of those, I was the primary organiser from it. I was the one that was perhaps most invested. So I knew it best and I understood it best, and I really set a challenge for myself. So no, at no stage did I sort of contemplate not going ahead. But there was days where we might have planned to do X kilometres and we fall short of that, but you had to work with the weather as well. There's only so much you can do because you're into a headwind, or I think that on the BMX bikes when we had that rest day because we were wet, it was, I think the comment at the time is we would have been drier if we had to jump in a swimming pool, but we were absolutely the whole day in the rain. It was pretty miserable. So that mental strength was really important.
So after this ride over, mental strength and practicing or planning things, do you want to do it again?
So the answer is yes, and this one probably did see before around having a go again, but with a different spin on it. And so the different spin was I was really pleased that whilst I was a cyclist at the time, for this ride I hadn't done much training. It was just general fitness of going for rides and stuff. But we were doing 300 kilometre rides, and we might do a 60k ride on a weekend or something, and that was about it. So it was general fitness, and I thought if I can do that sort of distance without the preparation in a couple of weeks, what can I do with the preparation? And so that sort of set the plan to try and have a record attempt to fastest time to cycle from Perth to Sydney, so the full country width, and see if we could break a world record.
So the BMX is 5 weeks. This was 2 weeks. What was the world record at that time?
So the world record was 8 days, 10 hours, 57 minutes.
So further distance.
So yeah, so 4,000 kilometres, and we our goal was to do it in 7 point something days. So and some of you have driven across the Nullarbor, and you probably might take, if you're going reasonably quick, you might do it in 3 days, but if you're doing it slightly leisurely, it's probably easily going to take you that amount of time. So we were trying to do roughly 4,000 days a week. So yeah.
So what was your average?
So it's been
daily average.
so for the record attempt, we were looking to do 500 to 600 kilometres a day on average.
Right.
And so the first day, so I'll talk through some of this in a moment, but the first day on that ride, I was in the saddle for 26.5 hours and started in Perth and nearly got to North.
And still not wearing cycling shoes.
No, I absolutely wasn't that firm. So I was wearing specialised cycling stuff that also was compression, so that try and deal with muscle recovery and those kind of bits and pieces. So absolutely wasn't at that stage. It was a very different ride, and so you can see here we're aiming for that sort of 7-something days. On average, we were working towards 21 hours a day in the saddle. That's what we had planned. The 90 minutes of sleep and 90 minutes to shower, go to the toilet, get changed, those kind of bits and pieces. So that was what we were working towards. When you are training for something like this, it's absolutely fantastic, and we'll probably talk about it. But you get to eat whatever you want because you are burning so many calories while you're training, and during the actual record attempt, as you see here, I was having to try and eat 45 times a day. So basically, just every half hour, I was trying to get something in. The issue was you just couldn't consume that much. And you'd get a sore jaw from eating so constantly, and your body just couldn't process it. And so, despite eating that sort of amount, so roughly a week's worth of food per day, the first day I lost something like 2.5 kilos, and that wasn't liquid loss. The hydration we were able to manage, and 10 to 12, I think was the average what we were working towards. But that first day, I think it was 14, because it was a long day, 14 litres that we were consuming. So 14 litres, eating a week's worth of food, and you lose 2.5 kilos. So what you were asking your body to do was find something.
So, the first time you were unsupported, second time you did one support vehicle. How about the support you had for this ride?
Yeah, through the roof. If I'll come back to those. So this was my support crew. Bit of a blurry photo there, though. So that's me here, and everyone else was part of my support crew. And so it was a ride that the preparation that we can touch on in a bit was 12 months again, but it was roughly about, with training and organising, it was full-time. I had a full-time job, but I was spending roughly 40 hours a week in prepping and training. We had four vehicles, as part of our support entourage. So we had a motorhome for your support crew to sleep in. We had a van that was following behind us to try and protect us. We had a scooter that was riding alongside us. So I wasn't streaming or riding behind anything. It was, but I generally always had someone beside me. So it was either a cyclist beside me or it was a scooter. And then we had another vehicle that was just sort of going in between and doing errands and those kind of bits and pieces. And so amongst the support, we had a range of cyclists. My brother again, a paramedic, Scott, and Ashley was a bicycle mechanic. So we made sure that we had people around that could fix things when they go wrong. And because of what I was trying to do, as soon as the ride started, all decision making went to the support group. I had no say on what I could or couldn't do, because you don't want someone that's sleep deprived making those sort of decisions. So a lot of trust and a lot of time was spent with the crew lead up to it. And so I guess touching on some of that preparation, I don't know what this machine was called, and it's only a little bit of a machine, but the training before you ride was intense, and this was a machine that I'm standing on, sort of like a surfboard kind of thing that moves constantly. and I either had to pull or push them, and all different sort of things at different times. So here I was obviously pulling, but other times you're twisting, and it was trying to get back strength into your back to be able to manage something like that, and strengthen your legs to pieces. And I remember I was going to this specialist physio twice a week, I think it was, and he was having fun putting me on this machine. It was absolutely brutal on it, and I asked him for how high does his settings go? Like, you're at the highest when no one else had ever been to that sort of level on a machine, but they were trying to really push it. But the recovery during the training side of things was really important as well. And somebody prep here. So this is Macca's in Northern, just on a practice ride. And so this was practicing some stops. So that to hop off your bike, I wasn't hopping off myself. You guys would prepare it in advance and have these little stools pop out. I'd pull up with the stool on each side, stand on it, and they'd really bite away from me. It was so it took a fair bit of lesson. Here was another sort of planning on another sort of prep ride, and the logistics were significant because it just had to work like clockwork. And then these other two were just fundraising events that we did. But then I was going to a spin class once a week as part of just something a bit of variety. Spending a lot of time on the bike trains, it can get a bit monotonous. And at that spin class, one day I snapped the pedal off, and another time I remember I was getting a resistance because it was an ordinary spin class. People knew what I was trying to do, but I had to obviously make it so I was working hard to sort of do it. And so the resistance that I was doing was that much that I could stand on one pedal with all my weight and it wouldn't turn. And so we're really about trying to build some strength. So yeah, a huge amount of preparation, and again mental preparation. And so I love this photo. You might not be able to sort of pick up on it. Again, this was a training ride, but to me, this captured someone that was mentally ready for it. I was talking about these numbers of 21 hours and 600 kilometres and eating 45 times a day, and everyone that you spoke to looked at you like you were crazy. And fair enough, but I was, but I have 100% belief that it was doable and possible. And to me, this photo captures the determination in it. That it wasn't a question of if I could do it. It was just getting to that start.
And you were fundraising for some gym, right?
Yeah, so raising money for your Royal Flying Doctors Service on this one. And so on our first ride, raising money for the Asthma Foundation, there was two things that came about from that. It was obviously a personal choice because of suffering asthma, but it was Asthma Foundation of WA, and so as we cross state borders, that becomes a little bit funny in terms of people wanting to support their own, which is fair enough. And obviously, when you're out in Nullarbor, the Royal Flying Doctors is absolutely key. You go to every servo and they've got a tin for it, and you see the landing strips on the highway, and so and obviously I live rurally, but not rurally that I rely on it. But that first ride really imprinted Royal Flying Doctors, and so yeah, that was the charity that we chose to support. And in hindsight, it was obviously really fitting because we were going across and hoping that we wouldn't need their services, but knowing that if we did, that's who we'd be calling upon. But also, the truckies have a huge appreciation of the Royal Flying Doctors because of where they spend their time, and so they're not that fond of cyclists riding in the middle of the night on a highway, but if they have some understanding as to why you're going about doing it, that also helps in that conversation as well.
So, how about the ride itself? If you could talk about your memories of it.
And just the other tidbit was that was from the West Australian at the time. My ride was due to conclude 3 weeks before my wedding, so that was just a little bit of sort of added pressure. My wife loved it because some of my training I was on the roller in my house, and I might be there for 2 or 3 hours just rolling in front of the TV, pedaling away, and she meant that I couldn't get away from planning wedding stuff. So I was there, and she could ask and whatever she wanted to. But yeah, the actual ride itself was it's really hard to explain it. It was obviously absolutely full on in the months leading up. Like the planning was ridiculous. In months leading up, for example, I stopped having any caffeine, so no Coke, no chocolate, nothing, because we knew that caffeine was going to be really important as a stimulant to keep us awake, and we wanted it to have a full effect, not to. And so it was things like that. And this photo here, this is a bit of carpet across the railway tracks. Because on one of our practice rides in Spencer's Brook, it had been drizzling, and as we came across the train tracks that were on the diagonal to the road, me and one of my cycling mates slid out, and we crashed and got ourselves up. We were right. But we thought we just can't afford to sort of risk that, and so we had mapped out exactly where railway line crossings were, and so we knew we had to have support crews ahead of us to make sure that we were right to be able to do something like that. We had a motorhome with us, but that was my van. That's a massage van, and he rode us literally just sort of out of picture here. The road noise wasn't going to keep me awake that was awesome. So that was me getting my 90 minutes of sleep on the side of the road. This was another sort of thing. This was we had a wet day, and so I was pretty wet and damp, and so they just used one of those medical blankets to try and warm us up while I was having a sleep. This was about just trying to improve visibility. There's only so much visibility you can do on a bike itself. We had lights and we had side reflectors and bits and pieces, and that's why it was really important for us to have vans and scooters to try and support us. Just before I go to the next slide, these are the steps that I mentioned before, but another thing you can see here is the drop mark. And so when I was coming up to a stop, land in advance, these were out. The steps would be on this side of the chalk mark. When I started back again, they would be on this side of the chalk mark because we were going for the Guinness World Record. Couldn't sort of have it that you didn't ride 10 centimetres or something like that. And so, accuracy was important. So, and GPS was just around stopping it. So we could have better track on what it was that we were doing. It was really important around that. And this was not the motorhome, obviously a support van. So you can see we had a lot of sponsors and supporters around it. Where the bike rack at the back where we could get the scooter on. We had to make that custom drink holders here so that they could pass drinks to me because I was only carrying the one bottle that I was drinking for that time. Trying to be efficient. I had multiple bikes, so this is just a more basic one. I had that time trial line. Plus we had some other spare bikes. And
You mentioned about recording a record. Was there someone with you who was qualified to authenticate your how did that work?
No, so we had to have a lot of video footage and bits and pieces, so we were recording a lot. I think most of the victims had cameras in and stuff like that. We had to have officials at the start to say that we left when we left, and had to have the saying that we ran through the activity. Guinness were actually really difficult to deal with. It wasn't until 2 days before the ride or something that they actually confirmed whether I had to start at the post office, so go post office to post office, or post to post. And it was post office to post office, but after a year of liaising with them, it was only Death Dog that they were actually able to sort of confirm that. But unfortunately, the ride for us, when we left, it was meant to be pretty. We left the last day of August or something like that, and the weather forecast was looking pretty good. The winds were meant to be pretty favourable for us. There was a chance that we might get a shower on a couple of days into the ride, but apart from that, we were pretty right. Unfortunately, as we know as farmers and locals, the weather bureau often get things wrong, and so we had some showers on the second day, so they were right there. But by the third day, it was absolutely pouring, and we had some really average weather. So this was day fairly moist, and so trying to keep dry enough to try and avoid chafing and those kind of bits and pieces. And terrible photo at the top, but that was our van that had all the reflectors and stuff on the back and whatever, trying to keep us safe. And you could barely see it because it was raining that hard. And so we had to, my support group stopped the tent on the third night, I think it was.
So you're confident getting to Sydney, right?
Yeah.
That's your goal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Somebody tells you, okay, we're going to pull the pin. What was your reaction to that?
I was pretty pissed off. Because, and exactly right, but it wasn't my decision, which was really, really tough to swallow. But as it went dark on that third night, the visibility was like from here to Wallway, 40 car, and they just thought that someone's going to get killed. Because we didn't have the opportunity to hop up the road, couldn't afford to stop. And we were riding all but an hour or two of each night, so it wasn't that it was daylight would be really soon, and so it was really tough because we were ahead of world record time, so we were on track exactly where we sort of hoped to be, despite the crappy weather that we had for the first couple of days, but they said to stop it, and unfortunately, I think the comment at that time is let's reevaluate it in the morning, but it's not the kind of thing that you can just stop for 8 hours and go, well, good to go again, and so, but in hindsight, absolutely, it was the right decision, and the manual that we had in support of with all your logistics information, the front cover. And I had done that because that was part of the prep stuff. It was safety was the first priority, and my perspective when I wrote that was safety of my crew. Because these were a bunch of people that were going to be working on the road, driving long hours, all those kind of bits and pieces. But equally applied to myself, and that was the decision that they made, and it was absolutely the correct decision.
So where were you at when you stopped the ride?
We'd just got onto the Nullarbor. A bit wet. So that was the morning after we stopped, and we still had a reasonable amount of rain that day, and then it cleared up thereafter. It was described as sort of the correct weather event for because it wasn't forecast and really easy for Bond to get it wrong. For us, it was a year's worth of sort of work, not wasted, just not playing out as we're hoping that person that was so committed to make it happen. And if it happened and you were behind world record or struggling, that would be a bit easier. But we were on track and we were pretty comfortable that we would have got it.
So there's your third ride. Just approach the Nullarbor and stop. Do you have a desire to do something like that again? And I usually ask that. So for the audience, Chris is a member of the club. He just bought a penny farthing. So you ordered BMX. We're ready to try and buy it. Triathlon. The record for the Nullarbor crossing on a penny farthing is record from Albi to Adelaide on a penny farthing in 28 days. I suggest you do this, but the potential is you can do that.
Yeah, well, it was really nice of Bill to sort of point that out. This was me, I think, 2 days later, and if you look at my ankles, they don't look like the ankles of probably, at the time I was probably, if not one of the fittest people in Australia. It was absolutely incredible, but when you stop, what you're putting your body through caught up with you pretty quickly. And so the legs, it wasn't, swelled up. I had ulcers on my tongue coming through that were by far the worst I've ever experienced. And it probably took 3 months for my body to recover. It was, and that was stopping halfway. It was really, really tough on the body. And I basically didn't hop on a bike for 12 months afterwards. I'd loved it up until that point. There was days where, because in preparation, I would get up at 4 a.m, go ride for 4 hours or something, head to work, come home, get another couple of hours in, and in between trying to do the logistics. So initially, I was quite happy not to touch a bike for a fair length of time. In terms of riding again, I don't have anything planned, but it's really tempting when you say about penny farthing. But it was an amazing experience in record attempt, but it wasn't fun. The up to and the makeshift and all that was really fun. The actual attempt was, if you want to torture yourself, then great way to go about doing it. And so I'm not sure. I wouldn't rule out something on a penny, for example, but I'm not sure I would be rushing there. But to be able to go for a ride, more like that middle one where you're largely at your own pace. I've got 3 boys that are just coming into their teen years, so maybe in 5 or 8 years' time, that might be a great sort of adventure to do them. Slow, steady, and as fun. So I think that's probably more likely than I certainly the record for fastest time for Perth City was broken a few years ago. Now it's 6 days something, and by my experience, I reckon that's the unbreakable. But no doubt someone will, but it certainly won't be me. But yeah, some other avenue. To my knowledge, still we didn't go for a record when we did the BMX, but to my knowledge, no one's ridden that far on the BMX as a continuous trip. So yeah, I suspect Nullarbor will fall again, but not.
That's all the questions I have. You guys have questions for Chris?
You mentioned that you had a coin box on your handlebars or something like that, and you, when you finished, you had $10,000. The logistics of carrying that amount of change on the bike.
As with both fundraising rides, most of the fundraising was done in advance, and so and a little bit about donating online. Again, the BMX was 20 years ago. The internet was certainly about, it wasn't as regular to just donate. But we did end up with, it wasn't thousands of dollars, but not only people would give you coins, and that just added to the weight. So that was sort of a battle. But that added to that nervousness also a little bit when you're staying on the side of your road. You got your bikes there, and you then have kids with some money in it as well. But yeah, we never had any issues in that.
Questions?
Now, with the BMX and the road bikes, did you ever come off? Because I know I surely would.
No, I don't think we did, but maybe on the road bike, perhaps if you had to hold off into the gravel shoulder, you were basically stopped at that stage, but your bike might have slipped out from you or something like that. But the BMX bikes with those trailers were notoriously hard to at slow speed, and so like to park and you had to sort of jackknife them. And so I'm sure a few bikes tumbled over, but we didn't crash in that sense. The record attempt, we didn't, I didn't crash, but I remember one of the guys having to say, "Oi, Chris," because I was sort of falling asleep while I was riding. I was still bedridden, but I was still upright. I was mentioned about caffeine and having to go without. I think it was on day 2. I said, "Oh, can I have a no-dose tablet?" And they said, "No, but you can have it later when you ride." So they were very cruel to be kind, but it was funny. And the other thing I didn't mention about that record yet is I didn't have to go. I went and got drug tested and stuff just before you ride, because some people just assume that you're doing something that's sort of superhuman or near superhuman, that there must be something to help you. And so we really wanted to be able to put all that. It wasn't a requirement, but we just didn't want that to be an ability to say that. That's what we've done.
Excellent. That's it. So again, we have another talk tomorrow, 12 o'clock here same time. Another bicycle ride, running probably around 2 o'clock today, and then 11 o'clock and 2 o'clock tomorrow. So thank you for coming and being with us. We're here for a while.